This sign is commonly seen around Quebec and states, "Watch for children, it could be yours." Watch for children signs are common in essentially any small community, residential, or school area. However, this sign in particular has received backlash due to it being too graphic and inappropriate. Compared to other watch for children signs across Canada, they tend to either have these stick figures to represent the kids, or they simply just state "watch for children." But this specific sign has been criticized for its detail. A dead young girl can be seen lying on the ground with blood pouring out. Some have argued that it's quite sinister, and a more appropriate image could have been implemented. However, others have argued that this graphic sign is crucial, as it's part of the cruel reality of what could happen to innocent children if drivers aren't paying attention. Adding on, it's been mentioned that this scare tactic is common in commercial and advertisements regarding other issues such as drunk driving, so it's been questioned why something like this should be removed. What do you guys think of this? Feel free to let me know in the comments. In January 2016, an incident involving unknown men and multiple young girl students from a local high school called Helenswood Academy caused extreme worry in the community. Reportedly, a group of men would flash themselves to these schoolgirls in a wooded footpath. The path led directly to the high school and was frequently used by many students. Over the years, many incidents have occurred on the path from Sandrock Park entrance to St. Helens Church, but due to the specific incident I just mentioned, authorities and members of the Helenswood Academy came together to deal with many safety concerns. Some of these implementations included cutting overgrown vegetation at the entrance of the path so that people walking by could be easily seen. A gap in the path would then be blocked using a fence, installation of CCTV cameras, and even the Helenswood Academy ran a school competition that involved students designing signs to encourage those walking on the path to be aware of their safety. While there were many submissions for the competition, two students named Sam Evans and A.B. Baker were the winners for their unique sign. It reads out, "You don't know who is lurking here. Enter at your own risk." Despite winning the competition, some believe that the sign had a harsh tone to it. But in the end, those part of the community were already scared of the recent tragedies in the area, so they viewed it as a clear and much needed warning for ongoers, especially young students. Now honestly, compared to some of the other signs in this video, this one doesn't seem all too bad and looks just like a normal sign, but believe it or not, this sign is in reference to a bridge that's been deemed as 11-foot 8-inch bridge, or the Can Opener Bridge. In Durham, North Carolina, a railroad bridge can be spotted in a Norfolk Southern Gregson Street overpass. To give you a bit of history, the bridge was built in the 1940s to allow passengers and freight trains cross over South Gregson Street in downtown Durham. 20 years prior to being built, engineers were in the process of coming up with the construction plans and the bridge's overall design. The standard height with clearance for vehicles was set at 11 feet 8 inches, and so that's how they built it. Fast forward to the early 1970s, and a new standard for clearance bridges was set to 14 feet, which is 2 feet and 4 inches higher than the bridge. And you would think that they did a reconstruction. Well, no. Law stated that bridges constructed before the new standards being implemented weren't required to meet the new clearance standards. But they obviously couldn't just leave the bridge without a warning sign, and so they started adding some. Since the increased clearance requirement was changed in 1973, there have been numerous collisions with all sorts of vehicles, and most of the time they tear off pieces of the bridge's roof, or they just shear off the truck's roof. Due to how common collisions occur, in 2008 a man named Jürgen Henn set up a bunch of cameras to record all the collisions with the bridge. Compilations of the bridge can be easily found, and there's even a dedicated website for it. 8 years after the cameras were installed, city officials finally stepped in to try and prevent further incidents from occurring. So a traffic sign at the intersection was added that let overheight vehicles know that, well, they're overheight. This seemed to work at first, since its installation on May 12, 2016, no crashes occurred until July of that year. But clearly the sign wasn't big enough of a warning to let ongoers know that they would collide. Finally, in October 2019, the North Carolina Railroad Company raised the bridge by 8 inches, and so now it stood at 12 feet 4 inches. And of course, they had to update the original sign. Now, the Swanee River is considered one of the last wild rivers in Florida, and are no strangers to a wild selection of water wildlife. One of these wildlife creatures is the Gulf sturgeon. Despite being an endangered species, sturgeons are a protected species of fish that are found in the Swanee River and its tributaries. Even though they are intentionally dangerous to humans, as swimming in the water with them will likely cause no harm, there have been many cases of them striking people in boats. This is because they have the ability to jump anywhere between 7 to 12 feet in the air, and if you combine that with their height and weight, they could definitely be dangerous to those riding along in their boats. As mentioned, they are typically gentle creatures and will only jump in the air to communicate, refill swim bladders, and a number of other reasons, meaning when they strike at humans, it's mostly an accidental collision. But unfortunately, one of these collisions ultimately led to the death of a young girl. On July 3rd, 2015, a family of 4 were traveling on a boat along the Swanee River State Park in Florida. The mother of the family, Tanya Rippey, was riding the boat with her 2 children, Jalen and Trevor Rippey, while the father, Waylon Rippey, was the one operating it. Out of nowhere, a sturgeon leaped towards the family, striking all 3 of them in the boat. They were all airlifted to the nearest hospital, and officials reported that Tanya suffered from facial trauma, including lacerations all over her face, and Trevor suffered a broken wrist and some facial injuries. Sadly, Jalen was in worse condition and was pronounced dead at the hospital. Wildlife officials then came to the conclusion that sturgeons were jumping more frequently than previous years due to the lower water levels, and up until this point, there has been no fatality recorded from a sturgeon strike. To spread some light in this dark discussion, Donna Rippey, Waylon's mother, came forward and expressed her concern surrounding the safety of others and wanted a no-wake zone or some other sort of warning so that this wouldn't happen again. So, to meet her request, this caution sign and a memorial of Jalen were added right beside the river to remind those of the tragedy and to be extra careful when taking crews in the river. While in the middle of a cricket match between Australia and New Zealand at Pearce's Optus Stadium, a food recall was posted on the Jumbotron advising those who have purchased any sandwiches, wraps, or salads to immediately return them. Shortly after, it was stated that only items containing chicken should be returned. Now you and I can only imagine how unsettling this could be, especially if you bought something and are wondering what was in your food and what was the issue. So what happened? A spokesman for the stadium later stated that one of the staff members saw what they believed to be uncooked meat in one of the wraps. After immediately seeing that, they pulled off all the wraps from display and even quality checked all other products. Thankfully, it was reported that a majority of the products that were returned hadn't been eaten yet, and only around 20 of the chicken wraps were sold before the problem was discovered. It was later explained that the stadium got the food items from an external company and that they themselves didn't prepare it at the venue. And for reassurance, it was later reported that no attendees got sick. Now, there are a couple of different variations of this sign. For example, there's this one with just the illustration, and then there's this sign that's more common. So these yellow warning signs are from Kungsholmen, Stockholm, and Sweden. These types of elevators are known as Paternoster lifts. They consist of a chain of open compartments that move slowly in a loop up and down inside a building without stopping. These elevators don't have internal doors, which allow passengers to freely step on or off at any floor they like. But despite its popularity through the 1900s, the construction of new Paternoster elevators stopped around the mid-1970s due to accessibility issues and safety concerns. Regarding the safety concerns, there's been a couple cases where people have been seriously injured or even killed from these elevators. This occurs when people ride past the official endpoints, have accidents when exiting or entering the lifts, or most commonly when people fall into the shaft between cars. And unfortunately, this tends to happen to young children, those with disabilities, and the elderly. Now, when it comes to the sign, it roughly translates to warning, squeeze risk. Forbidden to transport goods in lifts that lack an inner door. Transporting goods in general is prohibited in these lifts, as it's intended to just lift only 2 people. Now, when it comes to the image on the sign, I couldn't really find a specific article that discussed the incident of someone bringing their trash bin in the elevator and then being crushed by it. All I could find were some cases of people falling through the shift and simply just getting stuck, but like I said, no specific incident revolving being crushed by a bin. But I don't doubt that something like this hasn't happened. I mean, why would they make the sign in the first place if a problem like this didn't occur before? It also wouldn't be unreasonable, as due to the Paternoster lift's design, some doors don't always perfectly align with the rest of the shaft. So in this case, if someone did bring a bin out, even if a tiny piece of that bin's edge was sticking out, chances are it might snag onto it and, well, cause this. Paternosters aren't as common, at least in North America, but there's still some remaining in parts of Europe. There's even a Wikipedia article showing the surviving paternosters all across Europe. The sign warns others to be aware of monkeys throwing rocks. The sign was tracked to be from Satun, Thailand. Wild monkeys, and especially chimpanzees, are known for roaming around in the streets of Thailand, and there have been many cases showing how hostile they can be to the locals. They're also pretty unpredictable, and so many of those traveling to Thailand are warned to just be cautious, because you truly never know what can happen. I mean, there was an article written back in December 2023 when a group of long-tailed macaques began using stone tools when there was travel restrictions during that time period. This was because, well, with the lack of tourists coming in, it meant that the monkeys weren't being fed by them, and so they picked up the tools and started doing their thing. But looking back at the sign, it may just seem strange to a person that's just unaware of the local area. Japan is extremely vulnerable to both earthquakes and tsunamis due to its location in the Pacific Rim, having roughly 1/10 of the world's total active volcanoes and being situated at the meeting point of the 4 major tectonic plates. Despite being prone, the nation is known for having knowledge regarding dealing with both natural catastrophes. An example of this is something known as tsunami stones. Along the coast of Japan, there lies these tsunami stones. In the Sunriko coast, there are hundreds of stones with each one marking the height of the inundation line and territory above it. Another place called Eniyoshi has this 10-foot tall stone with a warning that's translated to this: high dwellings are the peace and harmony of our descendants. Remember the calamity of the great tsunamis. Do not build any homes below this point. For a bit of history, the creation of the stone warning was set up after the second tsunami struck the village of Eniyoshi. The first disaster occurred in 1896, which led to the deaths of 22,000 villagers. The remaining survivors decided to move to the hilltop area and stay there for many years. It took some time, but villagers would eventually move back downwards. But once again, in 1933, another tsunami struck, and this time left only 4 villagers. After that, the remaining survivors permanently moved uphill, and to prevent others from dying when another disaster happened, they placed the stone warning. And thankfully they did, because 27 years later in 1960, another tsunami struck, but this time, no one was killed or harmed. Here's the thing though, a warning can only do so much, and sometimes people just don't listen, or are even aware of them. Over time, residents have put their safety and beliefs behind the seawalls that were built by the Japanese government. Because of this, many have ignored the warnings and believed it was now safe to build homes closer to the lines, as they're now protected by the walls. But as history has shown, this would not end well for those on a lower level. On March 11, 2011, a 9.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the northeast coast of Honshu on the Japan Trench, which resulted in around 18,000 deaths. As expected, those who moved closer to the coastline were in the danger area and received the most damage. While this is definitely a tragic disaster, many have said that future generations should be aware of the history and understand the risks of simply not paying attention. This fortunately does seem to be happening, as many young students are being taught the history of Japan's natural disasters, and all people can really hope for is that they do pay attention and take responsibility. Before I end things off, I want to give a huge shout out to Nfuel for the video inspiration. I'll leave his channel and video in the description. I highly suggest you do so because he makes great videos. If you made it to this point, I just want to thank you so much for being here. It means so much to me. I know it's been a while, but next video is going to be an iceberg video. Not necessarily going to tell you guys what it's going to be about. I might leave like a hint in the community post, but next video is going to be an iceberg one. And I don't know the last time I made one. It's been a while. I know it's been maybe just over a year and a half, but so yeah, wait for that one. But of course, as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you're watching. Have a great rest of your day. But before you leave, don't leave yet. I have to tell you something very important. I just want to let you know that I truly mean that. I truly hope you, yes you, the person I'm pointing to at right now, I just want to let you know that I truly mean that. And I truly hope you do have a great rest of your day. Alright, I'm gonna go now. As always, thank you guys for being here, and I'll see you guys real soon. Goodbye for now.